All right. Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be finishing up with the Stephen J Crothers stories and then probably try and look into the redshift and of the moon and the sun. So I'll do a quick recap here of the Stephen J Crothers story. So I'll give you the who, what, when, where, and how. Little pro tip I saw from who is that dude? I can't think of his name. One of the bears. Um, anyway, he had a really interesting video about how to give intel, or pass intel along. And it's you got to give your who, what, when, where, and how. So I think that's a good format to start videos with. So the who is Stephen J. Crothers. The what is he was blackballed from the University of New South Wales during his PhD candidature. Candidature. Is that a word? Am I saying that right? Candidature. And basically, he found some holes in general relativity with by analyzing it, by conducting a mathematical analysis of it. And when he was presented, or when he kept trying to present these things, initially, the guy sponsoring his PhD was, excited about it. And then as they were trying to publish it, it kept meeting more resistance and more resistance. Which I guess could be, a legitimate thing. But anyway, when you follow the story of of what happened to this guy and the critiques of his work and up to and including one of the guys reviewing his work, this Professor Hammer guy, he literally changed his work and then turned it into and then based off of the changes that he made, he critiqued it and like about how wrong it was. And it was like, dude, you changed it. Like you're not even critiquing what he submitted at that point. So a lot of weird stuff happened here. And we'll get into that. So that was the what. So the when, this was in 2003 to current. This dude's still critiquing general relativity and the predictions of uh, things that have come out of it, such as gravitational waves that were allegedly detected by LIGO and the existence of black holes and things like that that he's heavily critiqued. And he claims that those are that the quote unquote existence of these things come out of uh doing Einstein's math wrong essentially. And he even was contacted by the interracial I wrote that completely wrong, the International General Relativity and Gravitational Committee. And one of the dudes that he spoke with on there was like completely censoring him. He basically told him that other people have uh have made similar critiques and those people were all wrong, and if they didn't get with the program that their work was going to become nothing and no one was ever going to hear from them again. And he kind of implied that no one's smart enough to critique Einstein's work, in his communications with Mr. Crothers. So I think that was about it. Oh, so one of the biggest things that he discovered that I'm gonna probably dedicate an entire video to explaining because I don't fully understand it yet myself, but I'm kind of picking up the trails here. 'Cause a lot of it has to do with how the R value is assigned and what its quote unquote exact definition is within general relativity and how it's being used. I think that was the biggest point of contention in his work. At least something that's easier to understand. And then when you see the reactions, because I'll dedicate this to a video and lay it all out. But when you see the reactions of how these people uh, react to his analysis and uh, what they invalidated on, it's insane. And none of them even want to mention that this other guy altered his work and then misinterpreted it, and then through his misinterpretation critiqued it. So nobody even wants to address any of that shit. So well, I think that's pretty damning in and of itself. Just when you see that type of behavior, because that's something we see happen a lot with the so-called science. So let's see here. Let me see where we left off actually. There's the link. All right, so I guess we're on part 7, so we'll pick it up from there. Okay, yeah, so this is with the GRG Society slash committee. That's what I was talking about earlier. I guess it's a society, not a committee or whatever. Anyway, this okay, this is written by somebody, one of the committee guys. This what's his name? To Kramer myself. Oh, what is his name? I can't remember. It starts with an M, I think. Yeah, it starts with an M. But anyway, McAllen, was this the guy? Yeah, I think. Yeah, this guy right here, McCallum. Okay. So this is McCallum to Stephen. I should first make it clear that the GRG Society, that's the General Relativity and Gravitational Society, itself does not engage in such issues as you raise, unless, of course, backed by a resolution of the General Assembly. So if you're going to critique Einstein, all these people have to agree that your critique is valid. And if they don't agree with it, then you have to change. And the Stephen guy refused to change, and needless to say, he did not get his PhD. He was, you know, basically expelled from the University of New South Wales for this. His the guy sponsoring his PhD candidature dropped him, and part of their requirements for their PhD program is that you have to be sponsored by a staff member there or whatever, and they advise you on your work and whatnot. And yeah, homie completely dropped them after meeting resistance on the critiques. But like the critiques he was getting back were like are retarded. Especially when dude changed his work, critique it. That should have been a dead giveaway, and that guy didn't stand up for him at all, which kind of tells you what's up with these General Assembly committee people. There are many academic controversies, and we would not serve our members properly if the officers started to take sides in them as representatives of the society. However, it happens that I can respond in a purely personal capacity on the papers you cite and those related to them because I have read some of them. Because I have read some of them and even some of the commentary on them by the referees, etc. Should be first made clear that what was said by Schwarzschild or by Hilbert is only of historical interest in and of itself. It is not contrary to what some people seem to believe. Wholly is responsible for the present understanding reflected in the text and papers. Th- This kind of misreading of where present view has its basis is even more common among people who reject the theory of relativity, who often base their arguments on specific phrases in Einstein's paper as if those sentences were what the current treatment depended on. In the case of the global picture of the Schwarzschild black hole, the comment below on the name, the proper treatment only emerged in the 50s and 60s and was perhaps set out paleologically in 1963. Thus, Hooch's proceedings and, of course, subsequent good textbooks. Secondly, however, there is a strand of building from, say, the mistake that Hilbert made to an indirect argument, or rather, poor foundation that our present concepts of black holes and interpretations of the Schwarzschild metric are wrong. Both of these aspects are surrounded by a mixture of correct arguments and arguments which are technically correct but joined with parts which show serious technical inadequacies. For instance, some of the remarks by Antaki and Lieb, Liebscher, and earlier those of Abrams show a some basic lack of understanding of some basic of differential geometry, and the claim of serious relativists are misrepresented. Claims of serious are misrepresented. You suggest that people don't rely. You suggest that people don't reply because they prefer to brand you a crank and possibly for some sinister motive connected with funding. That this is and that is and that this is arrogant and unscientific. I'm afraid that it's almost certainly simpler than that. Most of the points you made in various disguises have been argued before. Anyone who understands the subject properly knows that the correct geometric description is and should readily be able to correct the wrong parts of the papers of Taki, Abrams, etc. However, experience shows that no matter how patiently and carefully one explains the correct description and the geometric understanding of how or understanding we now have, the recipients often fail to grasp the technical points being made and can never be convinced. So it is a waste of time and effort to try. It is that failure to grasp the corrections which is truly unscientific. Perhaps the psychological hold of the belief that one has an insight into the mainstream that has been overlooked is so strong or is too strong to overcome by argument alone. I don't know you, so I assume so I've assumed you are a reasonable and competent person and try to explain, but I'm only going to do it once. If you come back here repeating the incorrect arguments. So this dude's telling him how he can argue. Like he's saying like if you don't argue it in this specific way, then I'm not even going to reply. Like, but I guess, to his credit, I guess he is if you were to assume that GR and stuff was right and these people had a real firm grasp on it, you can kind of see where he's coming from, I guess. But the evidence is as spotty as it is. And oh yeah, that's the other thing we're going to go over. We're going to go over. I forgot to mention this in the beginning there, but we're also going to go over some of the quote unquote proofs of general relativity, and that's the eclipse data from Arthur Eddington. Apparently, a lot of stuff was omitted from that. So we're going to look into that live towards the end of that and see what we can find. So yeah, he's telling dude like you can't even argue unless you argue a certain way that I can defeat you on. Like that sounds retarded in and of itself. One second. So I shall believe like you, I shall behave like your other correspondents and become. Yeah. So he says, if you don't argue the way that I tell you to argue, I shall become like your other correspondents and become silenced. That's not arrogance; it's a self-defense against wasting my time. On the other hand, if you are trying from my email or other textbooks to research a proper understanding and need additional help, I'd be happy to do so. So yeah, if you're willing to drop and see things my way, like I'll help you. I shall refer to the equations in physics 0310104, and I shall also refer to the exact solutions of Einstein's field equations by Stephanie Kramer, myself, Hansler and Hiller. And then he has a little acronym for the I guess these are the this committee boys or whatever. SKMHH. In 031, the physics thing he was talking about, it is claimed that relativists generally believe in equations 1 and 2. This is not true. A relativist making a careful statement would say that 1 is correct and either that 2m is greater than r, and r is greater than infinity, or 0 is greater than r, and 2 is greater than, or 0 is greater than r, and then r is greater than 2m. We'll look at what these are. 13 to the thing, general relativity. Okay. Uh, One is correct. Or yeah, yeah. The two regions where r is greater than two, or no, I'm sorry, where 2m is greater than r, and r is greater than 2m, were carefully characterized, generalized to capital R and capital T regions in the Novikov paper, which appeared as a golden oldie on the GRG journal, translated by me and Beevskevsky or Bevskev, Beevskev, something like that. A decent modern text on relativity would get this right and indeed discuss it carefully. Modern relativists, therefore, would not accept the way Hilbert discusses the matter, translated in 031, all that, as technically correct because it treats the whole range of 0 being greater than r and r being greater than infinity as a single coordinate patch. This fact maybe of some historical interest. It has nothing to do with the correct modern understanding of the Schwarzschild metric or its analytic extension, singularities, and so on. In mitigation of Ancati's claims, one confusing factor may be that physicists and mathematicians often say things in a technically incorrect but impunitively or intuitively helpful way. This only causes confusion if the audience is not clear on what is being done. If he had heard somebody talk in this loose way about R equals 2m, he may have formed the wrong impression about what the relativists are actually claiming. However, as I point out below, if one regards R as a function on the Kurzgesell Zerkeres manifold, it is everywhere well defined. So what's this dude? What did he say again? So this guy says, as I point out below, if one regards as R as a function on the seven, it leads to various subsequent misleading claims. For example, Antaki states that Schwarzschild never wrote a solution given by 1 and 2. Quite true. But the form 1 of the solution without 2 does not appear in Schwarzschild's original paper. Or wait, does appear in Schwarzschild's original paper with slightly different variable names. It is equation 14 there. It was rejected only because at the time Einstein's theory was stated with an unnecessary coordinate condition which one does not fulfill. One has to appreciate that a solution in general relative. One has to appreciate that a solution in general relativity is defined by the geometry it describes or by its invariant properties, not by the specific coordinates used. However, in this case, it seems to me perfectly reasonable not to only use the term Schwarzschild metric or Schwarzschild solution, but also Schwarzschild coordinates. One would certainly maintain that only the outer region of 2m being greater than r should be given Schwarzschild's name. Therefore, the terms like Schwarzschild horizon and Schwarzschild black hole are misnomers because this seems to be but this seems to be this but this seems to me ludicrously uh, pedantic. If that's the issue, I suggest you relax and reflect on your math theorem of mathematics, claims that all which claims that all named theorems have the wrong name. Come to Hilbert's paper. It is indeed an error. The proposed coordinate chart 1 and 2 is not correct. Is not a correct chart on the region intended to be covered. One can see as follows. First Kyle Zachary's form from 15.24. I guess this is something that these people have published, is undeniably a solution of Einstein's field or vacuum field equation, which is regular everywhere except where r tends to 0. R being defined by the UV equals minus r over 2m minus 1. R is, let's see, R is a perfectly good scalar defined everywhere on the manifold, which, by the way, does not include its boundary R equals 0. I use the term manifold strictly, not to be confused with manifolds with boundaries. Either of the manifold's two regions, 2m being greater than R, isometric with the original Schwarzschild form in its chart. One of its two regions, R being greater than 2m, is similarly isometric with the T region being R greater than 2m of the Hilbert form. I can talk about R equals 2m now sensibly in the KS manifold, but it is not part of the manifold covered by the Schwarzschild chart or the chart given the similar T region. By the way, Antaki and Libscher make a lot of play of the issue of 1 minus 1 maps or their lack, but it is perfectly okay for the metric expressed in particular coordinates to be valid only on the chart neighborhood of a larger manifold for the isometry isometry of the metric to be with the only part of the complete manifold. This in no way diminishes the correctness of either form intended, even for its two greater than r or no two or 2m greater than r region in the usual form 1. One should take at least two coordinates such as phi equals 0 or phi equals 2 pi Makes the coordinate system no longer than 1 minus 1, hence the instance inadmissible. I don't know what any of this fucking means. How long does this go on for? Hence it's inadmissible. Would the same authors make a fuss about the fact that one or two of the more strictly correct metrics of the chart neighborhoods was not isometric to the whole region? Of course not. However, the coordinate system of either the Hilbert forms breaks down at the surface of r equals 2m, where the Kurskow form it uh, where from the Kurskow form it is obvious all values of t and the limit r tends to 2m relate to the same two-dimensional sphere, so that the r equals 2m points at a boundary of those coordinates of those coordinate systems are a 2 minus, not 3 minus dimensional space. Hence, the Hilbert coordinates are not proper coordinates across 2 or across r equals 2m. So fine if one sticks to one side or the other, hence that they are not a 1 minus 1 map between the manifold of r r to the factor of 4. Couldn't think of what comes after cube. What if they forward it? What comes after cubing? Um, Unsurprising. I guess would that be like their four-dimensional space? Is that what that's supposed to? Unsurprisingly, strange things about or strange things happen, like problems with the arrow of time, as Antaki pointed out. So if you wanted to tell me that Hilbert made a mistake and Schwarzschild did not make a mistake at the same time, I agree. But if, as Antaki does, you want to go on and argue that the Schwarzschild form is meaningful singular at 2r, implying or r equals 2m, implying that we should not use the Kurskow form and so on, I completely disagree. Let me just pick up some of the points. Let me just pick up some of the points and leave you to study good literature. Study good literature enough to deal with the rest. And Taki talks about the choice of constants in Schwarzschild's form. This is totally irrelevant. I could write a metric of a flat Euclidean space in the way that adds an extra constant in a manner similar to the Schwarzschild's, and then ask if the need for an additional postulate, and then ask if there is need for an additional postulate. An infinity coordinate transforms are possible. Extra constants in them. No such constant has any invariant meaning unless it appears in an invariant derived from the solution. And the Schwarzschild's extra one does not. It does not. If one does not understand that, then one does not understand coordinate invariant theories. Discussing it as a matter of as if it mattered is a mistake. Dang. Taki mentions that one can find an invariant which blows up at r equals 2m and constructs one from the timeline, killing orbits. Correct. But this does not prove that this is a singularity in the usual sense, and Taki does not discuss the definition of a singularity, but seems to wrongly think it just means that some invariant blows up. Such an invariant can trivially be constructed if one has one of the passes through zero by taking the reciprocal by taking a reciprocal and that is and that it is in effect and that is in effect what is happening here. And Taki need not have done any new work. An invariant that passes through zero exactly at R equals 2m was given by Carlheed, Lindstorm, and Aman Naman in 0G14. And then he cites the page number, I guess, or something. Taking its reciprocal gives one that blows up. To define a singularity, one has to follow the arguments presented. For example, by Giroch, and then one finds the Schwarzschild horizon is not singular. Abrams has argued that we should stick to the Schwarzschild's original's radial coordinate and regard r equals 2m as a point. Its strange features, spheres around it have a limiting area of 16 over pi m squared. Radial geodesics approaching it stay a infinite distant apart, etc. Apparently cause him apparently causes him no problems. However, it is quite a revealing exercise to cut a sphere out of flat space, lay down coordinates on the rest of the radial coordinate vanishing on the sphere, treat that origin as a point. One gets the same pathologies. In other words, Schwarzschild's original coordinate system coordinates implicitly take a whole sphere and topologically identify it to a point uh, where this is reproducible with flat Euclidean space. Abrams seems to not accept that most people, if given the flat space in the funny form, would happily reverse the identification and restore the sphere, just as now, just as we do now understanding black holes. I could go on for some time. There is perhaps one other point worth stressing. People who dislike the correct interpretation of the Schwarzschild radius as extended to the Kurzweil picture tend to object to singular coordinate transformations, but the transformation needed only becomes singular at its points, not the coordinate chart, but their boundaries, and their coordinates are by definition given only in open regions. Regions is but on their boundaries and coordinates are given by definition or are by definition given only in open regions in usual manifolds. I kept reading that as unusual. And B, the singular transformations are needed between polar and Cartesian coordinates in flat space on the polar axis, which of course can be chosen to run through any given point. So everyone who thinks needing a singularity coordinate change is a sign of the singularity presumably believes that every point in flat space is singular. Best wishes, Malcolm McCallum. And I guess he had some additional things to say after that. I was hoping to shortly have some time to respond to you again. I have to say that the bulk of your arguments are, in my view, misguided and in several places technically incorrect. You do you do not have you do not mention the name of the journal or physicist you have been in touch with, but I very much doubt that they were really taken seriously by the mainstream. You may be in grave danger of getting yourself into a ghetto with people who are really regarded as being of no scientific merit, even if they are not actually cranks. If you want to be taken seriously, you need to convince people who read and write for physical review, classical and quantum gravity, and so on. No journal is immune from publishing bad papers, but those are the ones which really are considered usually reliable. Yeah, dude. So if you don't filter your work through these exact systems, no one gives a shit. I think these people are gonna let you critique Einstein if they're wrong. If they can hide it and just browbeat people into doing the math wrong. Now, again, though, to be fair to this Malcolm guy, um, he does appear to be addressing some of Stephen, uh, Stephen's points directly. So I don't know, like, how accurate and stuff they are, but he does appear to be addressing some of them. Oh, and then he tells him he should go publish there. And then we got another best wishes, Malcolm. You are perfectly, let's see, you are perfectly correct that most of my recent emails have not given the scientific arguments. As I warned you, my time is extremely limited, and I have so far only had time to get perhaps one third of the way towards writing out the points I wanted to argue and make a response to your long email. While I cannot judge your arguments on the other matters you raised, since I have not seen your papers, they do sound to me horribly as if you were moving into crank territory, claiming things like I have completely disposed of the black hole in all its varieties. There is no theoretical substance of the Big Bang hypothesis whatsoever. I have proved that the cosmological constant must precisely be zero. What was the cosmological constant again? I think that was where they re added dark energy so that they could explain the force or energy required to have a vacuum expand or something like that, for the universe to expand, whatever they consider it, or space time to expand. I have proved that all solutions purporting to the expansion of the universe are complete and utter gibberish. When I have time, I will take a look at the website you mentioned. I can say immediately that it does not relate to how any journal of standing in the field that I'm aware of, because I know their websites and your work, therefore unlikely to have any influence on gravity research. I've never heard of Professor Schmartle. Yep, he may or may not be an excellent mathematician, but that does not necessarily mean that he has the background and experience to judge the papers in this area of mathematical physics. Best wishes. Since you were unable or unwilling to engage with the technical arguments have resorted to verbal abuse, I will not continue to this discussion any further. May circulate that you wish to provide, or you may circulate what you wish, provided it is not extracted, i.e., that the full correspondence is used. Correct. Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I kind of came at this dude a little hard, but and obviously I don't believe GR. Dude appears to be at least a little more reasonable than I had originally thought. As if he's coming from the position that he's right. No, like this is how I guess I would respond to somebody too that was talking all this shit. But dude does seem to. It's hard to say, man, because when you're talking to these, I would love to see these people in a room together arguing it out. Because when you're looking through these emails and there's just so much more that they could say or go into text, but they just didn't like dude just didn't have time to type it all. And like I would love to hear talk about it. So anyway, that was letter number 7. So we'll take a quick look here at this means. David Hilbert on the origin of the Schwarzschild solution. we'll read the abstract and the intro real quick. David Hilbert and the origin of the Schwarzschild solution. Salvatore and Cadi. Abstract. The very early dismissal of Schwarzschild's original solutions and manifold, and the rise under Schwarzschild's name of the inequivalent solution of the manifold, found instead by Hilbert, are scrutinized and commented upon in light of the subsequent occurrences. It is reminded that Hilbert's manifold suffers from two defects that are absent in the Schwarzschild manifold. It does not admit a consistent drawing of the arrow of time. It allows for an invariant local and intrinsic singularity in its interior. It, the former defect is remedied by the changes to the topology of the extensions proposed by Singe, Kerskow, and Zekries. The latter persist unaffected in the extension since it is a local character. Introduction. There's indisputably no issue in there is indisputably no issue in Einstein's theory of general relativity that has been accurately scrutinized by so many relativists in so many decades, like the Schwarzschild solution. Innumerable research articles have been devoted to its study, still are at this present day. Any textbook of relativity, either introductory or advanced, cannot help dedicating one or more chapter to the. I have such a problem with this word. Derivation, derivation, to the derivation. Keep wanting to say that like completely differently. To the derivation of this pragmatic solution of Einstein's field equations for the vacuum, followed by a discussion of the obtained results of the theoretical predictions stemming from it. In the books published after 1970, with some notable exceptions, one more chapter is then devoted to the task of removing through the Kurzweil maximum extension the singularity that the metric component in the famous Schwarzschild expression for the interval, and then he has the Schwarzschild's solution or whatever right here. 0 is greater than r, and r is greater than infinity. Coordinates at 2 equals, or r equals 2m. The reader is always ensured that this is a spurious singularity devoid of local physical meaning to the bad choice of coordinate system done by Schwarzschild. It is therefore a bit surprising to learn through direct reading of the original Massenpunkt paper that Carl Schwarzschild never wrote a solution by the equations 1 and 2, nor solutions whose manifold was in 1-to-1 correspondence with the latter. Even worse, it turns out that due to his mention of the solution, he had the possibility to write a manifold in a 1-to-1 correspondence with the manifold described by 1 and 2, but deliberately refused to do so. In fact, after the Minkowskian boundary conditions of the of spatial infinity have been satisfied, Schwarzschild's original solution appears to contain still two constants of integration instead of the single one that appears in 1 and 2, and these are referring to different equations that was this it? Oh yeah. Okay, so this is what they do. Where were we at? I think, in fact, after the Minkowskian boundary conditions of the spatial. Wait, did I read that? Spatial infinity have been satisfied. The Schwarzschild's original solutions appear to contain blah blah blah. One constant. Okay, one of the constants has nothing to do with the active gravitational mass. And Schwarzschild chose it by appealing to Newton. The second one determines the position of the inner border of the manifold. Schwarzschild therefore needed an additional postulate to fix the second constant by appealing to the requirement continuity for the components of the metric in the range between the inner border and the and the spatial infinity. Schwarzschild chose his second constant in such a way as to position the singularity that brings his name in the brings his name just on the inner border of the manifold. The singular outcome of the per usual Schwarzschild's original papers one will not be expounded here any further because it has already been scrutinized in note in the note two that accompanies a recent English translation three of the Massenpunkt paper. One has a has rather answering here the ensuing question: how did it happen that the manifold described in one come two was Schwarzschild's solution? Why, when the original solution with two constants of integration, hence with the need for additional postulate, was forgotten? Frank's review of the how many pages is this? 12. We'll come back to it. Dating Schwarzschild's original manifold. Okay, your boy. Nah, not even close. Okay, all right. I'm retarded. Yo, what up? Check that whole thing out too. Dating the schmooch hands. Fucking original. Whatever the fuck this was. Bert. Yeah, finishing up on the Steven story. Got super into it, man. It's pretty crazy story. He kind of like lives exactly the same thing that we talk about is happening. How the peer review system and all that is very corrupt, and you can't critique anything that the mainstream is supporting really because everything would just fall apart like dominoes. So they've got this well constructed system where you're not allowed to critique Einstein's or you're not allowed to critique GR or any of the accepted mathematics and solutions to the equations unless this committee agrees to basically your critique and if it's valid or not. Like they decide, like their collective insights determine whether or not you can critique Einstein. Which I don't know if the Stephen guy is right or not, but it's all very interesting. And to see how these people behave in the face of criticism, it's pretty interesting. I emailed him and asked him if he would be interested in going on Jaren's channel for an interview, just to present like his side of things and all that. Like if nothing else, just to talk about the story of how he got kicked out of uni and all that, and his research got dropped. Oh shit. Yep. Let's see, where were we at now? Through this, I think. Yeah, he seems dope, man. I contacted him and he emailed me back about some other stuff because I had some questions for him about what he was, about his LIGO paper. He emailed me back and was like, "Yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions and stuff." And I actually originally asked him if he would go on Icon Science's that channel because he's a professor with a math degree and all that. So it would be cool to see them talk about the mathematics and what Stephen's interpretation of the whole thing is versus what the mainstream narrative of it is. And he actually agreed to do that as well. And but I don't know if Icon Science that has reached out to him or not. So anyway, we'll continue on here. I think we're done with this one actually. We're just referencing what he was talking about. Leading. So moving on to in the story. Okay, so I replied here. Okay, so this is his response to the thing that I just read, which was several email communications replying to Crothers. Continue on. This is Crothers replying to McCallum. This is one of the head dudes at the General Relativity uh, Committee thing or whatever. I am new to theoretical physics. I have taken one sec. I have taken up the subject in my middle-aged spare time. Consequently, I approach the arguments for and against the conventional interpretation of the Hilbert solution without any academic bias. In the terms, in terms of analytical skills I have acquired in my other academic work, and from a long experience as a erstwhile private detective. My motivation has been to find out for myself whether or not Einstein's theory is as esoteric and incomprehensible as it is as so often claimed. I feel I have verified my initial suspicion that the theory is not beyond the cognitive powers of anyone interested in the subject, willing to think hard about it. I am certainly not as well read on the subject as the experts, so I am not sure if what I if what I have to say will apply, or if what I have to say will simply be a repeat of the arguments you have warned me about, and therefore, I suppose I run the risk of trying your patience. I could have sworn I read this yesterday. Does any of this sound familiar? Or not yesterday, whatever day that was I was reading. I can't remember if I read it live or not. Trying your patience. In my study, I have not. I have. In my study, I have been surprised to find that many inaccuracies and contrary claims that my experience as a private detective leads me to believe that all is not as it should be. Perhaps in my former profession, requirements for accuracy in argument and evidence influence me unduly in matters of science, but science and detective work have the common requirement of logical and substantiation. And in the mathematical science, mathematical rigor is or in mathematical science, mathematical rigor is paramount. The first thing that struck me when I encountered the Hilbert solution and the subsequent conventional interpretation thereof, aside of the inaccuracies, the and the claims attributed to the Schwarzschild, and the fact that the solution is not due to Schwarzschild at all, is the past two assumptions are made which I do not feel are mathematically justified, viz. Then A, the regions 0 greater than R and R greater than 2M and M greater than R and R greater than infinity are valid regions. B, the parameter R is a radius of the gravitational field, that R is a measurable quantity. But yeah, he's got a real problem with how people use R in general relativity, and he's made several points about it, which I'm gonna go over later and then reiterate them once I understand it better. But he keeps coming back to this whole R situation and how they've misused it. As I see, one cannot talk about the extensions into the region 0 greater than R and R greater than 2M, or divisions into R and T regions until it has been rigorously established that the said regions are valid to begin with. The mere assumption is not, in my view, permissible. Similarly, one cannot treat the R parameter as a radius and measurable quantity in the gravitational field without first demonstrating it is such. This, I think, is a really good critique. My perception is none of this has been done in any of the conventional analysis. Therefore, my investigation first considered the answers to these issues. I note that it is required that the metric of special relativity is to be recovered in the absence of matter, and that in the far and in the far field, the metric is, and then he gives the equation for that. Yeah, let's copy this real quick. Next. Obviously, the spatial component for this metric describes a sphere centered at the point r sub c equals 0. Consider two concentric spheres, spherical surfaces at r sub whatever that is, r sub o and r sub o greater than r. Owing to the isotropy of space, there is no loss of the generality of the that's a weird word of generality in the restriction r greater than or r sub o greater than r. The distance between the surface is an interval along a radial line through r sub c, r sub o, and r. Consequently, one can consider r sub o and r as points, just as any points that are in the radial line cutting the surfaces at r sub o and r. These point lines at the ends of the interval, which are orthogonal to the spherical or to orthogonal to spherical surfaces. The geometry of one such that the distance between r sub o and r is given by, and then he's got an equation here. D is the Euclidean distance of r sub o equals 0 and d equals r. According to the circumference, weird looking x is the great circle given by weird x equals 2 pi r. Weird looking x is Euclidean. This usual equation for the circumference of a circle. Furthermore, the circumference of a great circle centered at r sub o and reaching to r is x equals 2 pi d, where d is given by 2. Yeah, so this whole thing is your boy D. Jesus, that's crazy how they write all this shit out. Indeed, D may be considered the radius of the sphere on R sub O. Now introduced a test particle for each R sub 0 and R. Let the particle located at R sub O acquire mass. As I see it, the coordinates sub O and R do not change. However, the distance between R sub O and R will no longer be given by 2. The circumference will no longer be given by equation 2, and the circumference of the great circle centered at r sub o and reaching to r will no longer be given by equation 4. The static generalization of 1 can be written out as, and then he has an equation here, and then a, b, and or 0 is greater than a, b, and c in his equation. The solution of equation 5 for the gravitational field will yield a mapping of the Euclidean distance d equals r minus r sub 0 or sub o into the Euclidean distance. I can't stand reading these fucking equations. Seek mapping and transform. Alternatively, one could drop the blah blah blah. Many more pages of this. Jesus, man, he wrote this. This is a big reply, dude. All right. Alternatively, one could drop the star in equation 8 to obtain the familiar Drosty wheel Hilbert line element, and then nothing, as did J. Drosty and Arthur Eddington. That r squared can be replaced by a general function of r without destroying the spherical symmetry of 10 of equation 10. Let the function be capital C parentheses r, so that equation 9 is again obtained. Equation 10 is a particular solution, but equation 9 provides the mean by which the form of C r might be determined to obtain by means of which all particular solutions in terms of an infinite sequence may be constructed according to the general prescription of Eddington. Clearly, the correct forms CR must naturally yield the Droste, Wield, and Hilbert solution. Oh, the Hilbert solution. Okay. As well as the Schwarzschild solution and the Brillouin Brillian solution against the infinitude of particular solutions that the field equations admit. I have made no assumptions as to the range of the parameters of R. That only the assumption about R I make is that it is a point to be that the only assumption about R that I make is that the point mass is located somewhere, and that somewhere is R sub O, the value of which must be obtained rigorously from the geometry equation 9, from the geometry of equation 9. The geometrical relationship. Yo, what up, Doug? Big Doug in the house. What's up? Getting learned on some Einstein stuff, allegedly. Let's see where we were at. The geometric, I think, yeah, the geometrical relationships between the components of the metric tensor in equation 1 must precisely be the same in equation 9 and equation 10. Therefore, the circumference x is a great circle on equation 9 given by, and he lists another equation here, x equals 2 pi the square of CR. I don't know what any, like, you know, and the proper distance, proper radius, R sub P R is, he's got more equations. I call the square of CR the curvature radius, and BR, they're taking B R from 9 gives another equation. The relationship between R and RP is as R sub 0 or sub O, and R sub P, R equals 0. Yep. Yeah, that's me. Been going back and forth with him in emails for like a year now. Been on his channel a couple of times. I think like probably like 4 or 5 times. We're in the middle of sorting through the vacuum situation right now. We're still doing some follow up back and forths together on that. I got my fingers crossed, but I think I may have shown him like the issue he's having. So we'll see what he replies in his email tomorrow or whenever he gets around to it. I think I got him with a good one. See how that plays out. Um, equation 16. Wait, where is that? Jesus, this goes on for even more. I can't read the rest of this. Yeah, dude, when we're finally done with the full convo, I'm gonna ask him if it's okay if I publish it publicly or whatever, and just to like show the record of events that transpired, and yeah, I think he's already done a fair bit of cog dissing in it, so we'll see what he says when I'll just give you a little. Oh fuck, I don't want to. Hang on 1 second. display 2. So where was... So I showed him one of those, one of the density beaker things or whatever. And he emailed me back and was like, exactly. Oh, no way. He actually already replied. I just didn't see it, I think. Let me see. He said, I get you. Let's dig in. So there is a line that separates the... Bro. Dude, it happened. It happened, though. Yeah. The thing I like about I Can Science That is that he's actually, for one, qualified, uh, to like present the official narrative, I guess, or like speak on it, because he actually has the quote unquote degrees and whatnot. Unlike some of the other, dude, you gotta fucking, man, like, this is crazy, dude. I just saw his reply. God. Yeah, I think it's pretty much over. Like, I don't know where to even go from what he just said. Um, so yeah, anyway, I showed him the density beaker thing, right? And I'm like, these they require a container, blah blah blah. And he's like, where's the container in the thing? So I point out, the beaker's the container, and then he just like, it looks like he's just completely deferring to it and sticking to what's going on inside the beaker and ignoring the beaker itself is creating the conditions that are possible for the fluids to separate due to density and stuff. It's just, this is crazy. And I didn't expect that. I low-key thought he was gonna, like, I don't know. It's crazy. That's crazy. All right. Um, we'll come back to this, I guess. Nah, I should finish it. Fuck it. Yeah, there's no way I can finish that. All right, so that was Crothers' reply to Callum when he said, "Yeah, I mean, hit me up with what you think, and if it's what I agree is acceptable critiques, then I'll allow it." And we'll see what the Callum guy's reply is to his reply. As I was right, the user will spare. He goes for the last document. Yeah, but I've had good convos with him and stuff. Like I did like several follow ups on him about satellites and Himawari and all that, and he did actually because I was like, well, if they had balloons and all, I presented our whole balloon argument and all that, and I compared it basically to the next rad radar system, like how that covers America basically, with just you know I forget how many systems they have placed, but it's not that many really, considering it covers the entire country, like every square foot of it. So uh, yeah, he did admit, he was like, yeah, I could see how it could be faked and all that, and so yeah, he does concede like some stuff, but obviously he's super into the globe. I don't think I, I had a lot of hope for him that I could, that I would show him something that would that would like break this cognitus or whatever. But literally, I don't think that's possible with him. He's so far in, dude. He's so far in. Homie's talking about what's going on inside the container and ignoring the container entirely. Like, it's pretty much a wrap. but I still like the guy. You know, cool dude. So this is Callum replying to Crothers. Dear Mr. Crothers. Yeah, it really is, man. Like I was watching him talk to some other flat earth guy or not flat earth guy, some pro science or channel. It was called like Flat Earth Moon or Flat Earth Map or something like that, or Research Flat Math or something like that. Research Flat Moon, maybe, I don't know. But anyway, apparently this guy's like a math guy as well, and they were like swapping stories and stuff. And like some of Viking Science's that's childhood stories, were like about like building model rockets and stuff with his brother. So he's got like mad attachment to it, and then he went and grew up and figured out all the rocket math and all that. So he's like super invested in it being real, you know. And then when he sees like the TV presentations of it and all, he's like, "Yeah, dude, that rocket's going up there." He's super into it. It's just, you know, it is what it is, as they say. The following opening was written some time ago, but there's been a long gap until I had enough time to reply to complete this email. I had at least oh, hold on a second. Plus he gets paid for it, so how could it not be real if he gets a paycheck for it? I at last have a little time in which to write an answer to your long email setting out your arguments and views. I have to be honest with you, my heart sank as I read it. I swear I thought I read this the other day on stream. It contains the sort of errors which are often it contains the sort of errors which often take even more paper to correct than they take to express, and from which, in my experience, it is almost impossible to move people once they have developed the false belief that their corrections may be to their physiological or psychological value in believing one has outsmarted Einstein. Yep, through that. Outsmarted Einstein. However, towards the end, I think some genuine points come to light. I want to address them first, returning to the technical issues later that I hope, later that I hope you are not doomed to become a crank. This guy's thinking for himself, dude. Like, I hope you stop doing that. In fact, one question that does interest me is how you arrived at these arguments you put. They appear to have a lot in common with the mistakes made by Abrams and Libscher and Antaki. Were you in fact following them? Have you arrived at the same errors yourself? It's an interesting question. For the avoidance of doubt, I shall make clear at the beginning that I shall follow the convention of attaching Schwarzschild's name and his honor to concepts and structures related to his vacuum solution, even if they were not discovered by Schwarzschild himself. Nice. Well, that's awful. It's mighty white of you to give him that credit, even if he didn't do it. The historic the historic question of who did of who did it is not important, even though I'm gonna give it to this guy. Uh, is of no importance to the correctness of the modern interpretations, but I fully agree that not all of these ideas. One second. That not all of these ideas actually come from Schwarzschild himself, and that Hilbert's treatment is inadequate. Also, unless otherwise stated, I will use the normal r coordinate for the Schwarzschild metric, which Schwarzschild himself denoted as capital R in his equation 14. So when I refer to your R sub O, I assume that the R, or I do not assume that the R in it has that meaning. Okay, so he's clarifying his position on this R situation. Note this real quick. Shallows versus R. Although my view, although my view is that you and the others who have followed similar tracks are over concerned with the mistakes. Uh, lacuna. Let's see what this word means. Unfilled space or interval of gap. Lacuna. Mistakes, lacuna, and other things to criticize the historical development, whereas the present view is not, repeat, is not dependent on the exact wording of the papers of Schwarzschild, Hilbert, and others. One historical point about what I understand to be your own stance may be worth making. Schwarzschild's form using his R was derived entirely because at the time Einstein had adjoined to what now we take as the basis of general relativity, the coordinate condition, which Schwarzschild's equation, which is Schwarzschild's equation 5. This requirement later abandoned and unnecessary. This requirement later abandoned as unnecessary is partly responsible for the fuss you and others make about what happens as own Schwarzschild's own R approaches zero. If he had taken the R at its best coordinate, or as the best coordinate, which he could have done had he jettisoned equation 5, which he could have done had he jettisoned equation 5, there would still have been problems about the treatment of R equals A. I forget what does this A thing mean again? Angular acceleration. There we go. R equals angular acceleration. But the specific line you are taken might never be developed. So your position grows from Einstein's mistake, in my view. Point towards the end struck me that struck me was that you formulate an objection to the usual interpretation, if I may paraphrase, as based on the lack in the Kurskow-Zachary's form of an invariantly defined radial distance from a mass point, the asterisk thing. Requirement. Oh, okay. That would be equals, what was that? Point mass. Point mass of the gravitational field. All right. The requirement is stated clearly that the boundary condition after your 10 axioms. The lack is clearly true, but rejection on this ground is an opinion. It is one to which you are perfectly entitled. But to my mind, if you reject the usual interpretation because it does not provide such a radius, then you reject general relativity. It is not viable in my view it is not viable in my view for reasons given before before and amplified below to try and preserve general relativity at all cost of identifying the sphere r equals 2m as a point. Point masses are singular in Newtonian theory, and all laboratory objects, including elementary particles, on close enough inspection behave as extended distributions. Excuse me. Therefore, I find it odd that you seem to hang on your objection on a requirement to model point masses. It is reasonable to say that a key step in the evolution of our understanding of the spherically symmetric black hole was the recognition that general relativity has no point mass solution of the has no one second. It is reasonable to say that a key step in the evolution of our understanding of the spherically symmetric black hole was the recognition that general relativity has no point mass solution of the type found in Newtonian theory. Right. Spell that as black. Converting non or converting mathematical artifices to physical ones out of VR. Newton's conclusions from Newton's theory. That was my response to a long email, but I became confused about your actual views since in a later email you say that all point masses and point charge solutions are described as a fictitious object. There is a genuine issue well known in the subject of the inconsistency between the idea of a test mass whose gravitational field is neglected and the result of working out the field for a spherical object as it does not give a point mass. If you had that in mind, I can only say A, yes, and B, this is very old news. It is, for instance, the driver for Einstein's work with the infield and Hoff with is for the driver for Einstein's work with Infield and Hoffman, and is close to being solved by the efforts of several groups. Schaefer, Pitt, Poison, your boy Poison, and Will and their co-workers have each worked on this in recent years. Well, let's wonder if they ever squared that hole. Check into that later. I now proceed to the comments prefaced by I would now like to make a few general remarks. Of course, you are right that the Newtonian black hole idea gives nothing more than an order of magnitude calculations. Physics often develops by such intuitions. However, I don't understand your criticism. If it is true that that light has a definite speed or a maximum speed, then it will be impossible for observers more than a distance from a sufficiently massive object to receive light from that object in Newtonian theory. Do you dispute that? Let me read that again. Of course, you are right that in Newtonian black hole ideas give nothing more than an order of magnitude calculation. Right, so they're just mathematical artifices. Physics often develops by such intuitions. However, I don't understand your criticism. If it is true that light has a definite speed or a maximum speed, then it will be impossible for observers more than a certain distance from a sufficiently massive object to receive light from that object in Newtonian theory. Do you dispute that? So, did he just hit him with some inverse square of light? There's a big difference between we do not. There is a big difference between we do not know a two body exact solution, except in very artificial cases in axisymmetric systems and the claim that the not closed form solutions of the character does not exist. In fact, the initial value problem arguments give give pretty good results to the existence of solutions and their nature can now be investigated by numerical methods. God, I'm fucking. Method used in recent years were not adequate. It is equally true that there are solutions in Newtonian theory which are known only numerically and will never be given in an exact form. Of any realistic stellar model is in this or any almost any realistic stellar model is in this category. So I really cannot see this as a serious objection. Physical reality is much too complicated for us to hope to be able to give a close form solution for the universe. My other interest in computer algebra means that I can give quite precise definitions and arguments, but it's not necessarily but surely not necessarily here. So yeah, they're totally cool with those. So this is why they're totally cool with just swapping it when they observe a galaxy spinning too fast that just breaks their model of gravity and all that, and then they just invoke dark matter and they're like, well, there's just things we can't account for that have to be there. Like they're so convicted into the model that they'll literally just add something as a placeholder to keep the math balanced. Like that's why when we address that as a critique, they're like, "What? Like, are you retarded? Of course we, of course we made a variable to account for 95% of the mass of the universe, or whatever number it is. I think it's like 94% or something like that. Something crazy." He's like, I don't see how that's even a criticism. Yeah, dude, you totally wouldn't. Your comments about open discussion and the cult-like following of Einstein really do border on crank territory. See the position of John Baez's amusing crackpot index. Oh yeah, let's see what this guy has to say about crackpots, dude. Here in a minute. Yeah. Nobody would disagree about your general comment on the need for a free discussion, and most agree that the known theories are not absolute. But the reason for the detailed arguments you make are not acceptable by reputable journals. It says, but the reason the sort of detailed arguments you make are not accepted by reputable journals is that they are bad arguments, not not any adherence to orthodoxy. In fact, almost nobody believes General GR is absolutely correct, i.e., what some people this is crazy. I see people doing this stuff all the time, just making up stuff to fit their model. Yeah, they're like they literally dude's just like, yeah, of course we added that. Like, what do you mean? Physics is really hard to understand, and then nobody will ever know the variables. So we'll just make up the math to describe it, and that'll reaffirm all our presuppositions. Wild. And I think because they've figured it out with quote unquote math, they're like they're even more super into it. Like they're on like the cutting edge of nonsense, but they don't realize it. So they're just so into it. Let's see, in fact, almost nobody believes GR is absolutely correct. That's not what I've heard. I've heard it being described as perfect and all these things, and it's absolutely amazing, and we could do all these predictions, and the whole universe lives in Einstein's head, and all this shit. But here, from your boy himself, we'll go ahead and save that quote too, because it's a good one. Okay, well, what some people call a basic theory, I have never heard anyone take that view. They believe it is like Newton's. They believe it is like Newton's theory, a very good approximation of reality in a certain domain of ac- applicability. Applicability, and the fact that the next approximation after Newton's theory, which has been shown not to be accurate enough for some solar system measurements, they also believe the same of all the other widely used present day theories. Experimentalists do high precision tests partly in order to check the predictions in great detail. So, yeah, you know what? They actually don't, man. And all that LIGO stuff. Like, dude, this dude, did you see what that guy posted on my LIGO video? Like, he straight dropped bombs on it. And this dude's talking about how, let me see what these are. Uh, LIGO. Where's my LIGO video? How do I not? I can't see it. Am I blind? Redshift. This one? Or no, I think it was this one. Oh, weird. Well, now I'm like really perturbed. It should be. Wasn't in this one, was it? There's no comments on that. Where was that? He was just dropping fucking bombs. It was this dude right here, your boy Dr. David Banner, FES. Shout out to him. But I can't find his comment on me. I have to find this now. It's like bothering me. Oh, there. Is this it? Wow, I'm dumb. There it is. Anyway, so dude's saying the experimentalists do high precision tests in order to partially or to partly check and make sure that these predictions that they get. So one of the things that GR predicts is these gravitational waves that LIGO says uh, that they detect, but like even from their own reports. So upon further investigation, it was found that an aircraft was flying near the facility during the alleged receipt of the signal wave or vibration from the object light years away from space. Due to the length of the interferometer's arms and the chamber halls, the sensitivity of the facility to any and all waves and vibrations more than likely picked up small vibrations from said aircraft flying near the facility, says real scientist. And then there was yeah, until we are able to completely remove all LIGO from any and all local electrical hums, seismic activities, plus any and all other waves from nearby objects, such as aircrafts in close proximity to the facility. We cannot assure that we know, any of this bullshit. Like it's the thing is so sensitive that an airplane flying overhead would produce the um an accurate match to the data tables that they've modeled out, that GR would predict a gravitational wave would look like. But your boy's just under this assumption. And keep in mind, they say that the gravitational waves, the first one that was ever detected, was so weak and faint that it was outside of the scope of the instrument to physically accurately measure, like its air tolerance or whatever. But they accept it anyways because science. And then yeah, dude. And then the most recent one or whatever, they said they detected it during a test run of the system before it even went operational to do its detecting or whatever. And during this test run, the filters that it has in place that stop it from like generating false positives and whatnot and like filter out background noise, those filters weren't being applied during this test run. And this is what they use to of th- this is how they use their highly precise instruments to test and check the predictions of general relativity. So like it's actually no surprise that this person in this highly specialized field of mathematics and mathematical analysis believes that everyone in their field is doing the same thing. Like, it's kind of like Jaron says, or kind of gives that example how, they feel that they're got it figured out in their field, and therefore everyone in their field must also have it figured out. And they just kind of defer to each other. Because this, like, if, like, this just isn't even true at all. And they use the results of this shit to back up their math. So, and and am sure they hope to be. Let's start from the beginning. Experimentalists do high precision tests partly in order to check the predictions in great detail. Check their predictions in great detail, and I am sure they do hope to be the ones who find the discrepancy that will only be explained by the next and better theory, maybe a true quantum gravity theory, for instance. See, like there they are again with that. Oh, all scientists are competing and trying to disprove the theories, and he says this as he's stifling a guy who's noticed problems within general relativity. In order for another theory to come through. Oh yeah, dude, it's nuts. Military compartmentalization is off the fucking charts. Like they've got this shit down to a science, like actual science, you know. And even back in the day, like the Romans, whoever they allegedly were really good at compartmentalization and shit like that. Like this is how large complex systems have to work, like on that need to know basis. Um, so it's just crazy that people don't see it. Or like when you bring that up, they're like, nah, but like, it's all fine. Because like as this dude's making sure that no, because with the Big Bang Theory, general relativity, special relativity, and whatever that other one was, I forget. Without those three things all backing each other up and reaffirming each other, like nobody else even gets another chance for theories. Like there's other theories, but they're not afforded the same luxuries that general relativity is afforded, where they'll just make up a variable to make up 90% of the mass of the universe and shit, even though it's not detectable and doesn't interact with anything. It's crazy. However, most attacks on special and general relativity are not at that level. It's it helps to see physical theories as composed of mathematical models and a set of rules for interpreting that model to make predictions about experimental results. Some attacks claim to show that the mathematical structure of special relativity and general relativity is inconsistent, which to most of us seems ludicrous since it was just since it since it is just standard Riemann geometry with some additional well posed differential equations. And the others that the interpretive rules are inconsistent and others that the interpretive rules are inconsistent, which again most of us that this appears inevitably wrong. Of course, in neither case can one give a definite proof, but in the first case where a proof would get into the territory of Gödel's famous result, lots of mathematics would fall if this does. And in the second experiment, and a deep enough understanding gives one pretty strong gives one pretty strong faith. So most people in the field believe attacks at those levels will inevitably be wrong, and usually it is not hard to see where the error occurs, although sometimes people come up with new and subtle variants. Again, bitter experience shows that trying to get the heirs authors to recognize their mistakes is usually a lost cause, and so the journals and scientists completely give up and brush them off to avoid wasting their time, which is much better spent inventing variables to describe things that completely destroy the pre-existing math that's used to describe the universe. Uh, okay. Let's see. Avoid wasting their time, which is what I may do to you if you persist in some of your arguments. I really have better things to do beyond a certain point. To conclude that part, note that my answer is longer than your statement, which is usual kind of correspondence. And one reason serious scientists do not have time to engage in it. Usually, note my answer is longer than your statement, which is usually the kind of correspondence and the one reason serious scientists. I mean, dude, homie hit you with a whole book of math. Like, relax with your fucking critiques of how much effort you have to put into reply. I should also comment on the issue of alternative theories of gravitation. Most of these cover the same domain as GR and can be tested by the same means. Wanting or have almost all almost all such have been found wanting. Uh, See Will's well-known book plus papers of Cooley and others been found wanting, i.e., disagree with experiment. Those do not unwanting. Unwanting, i.e., okay. Well, anyway, those that do not avoid doing so, usually by being indistinguished from GR in their predictions to the possible measurement limits. I do not think constructing new theories at this level is worthwhile. There are already at least 150 in literature. Until or unless an experimental discrepancy is verified on the scales GR works on. Yeah, dude. So all we have to do is find a discrepancy with things that they say are in the sky that are at a distance of, hundreds of sextillions of miles away, of unimaginable sizes, like, on that scale, if we can find a discrepancy, dude, if we can find an dude, fuck this guy. An experimental discrepancy of lights in the sky at distances nobody can really know, but they've all made assumptions about the sizes of the lights and stuff and the quote unquote scale of it. So we have to find a discrepancy with a star that weighs 800 bajillion pounds and its gravitational effect on shit around it. Like, get the fuck out of here, dude. It's such a, I don't know. gay, man. Yeah, dude. There. You know what? What else was that? Constructing. So discrepancies. Yeah. Okay. You know what? We'll keep this. 'Cause I have a discrepancy allegedly that we're gonna look into in a little bit. So we actually do have something we could quote unquote test. Math discrepancy in VR. Verified by ANT. All right. So yeah, we'll come back to that. As for the treatment in your PhD, I have only evidence of the arguments in your long emails. Dude, because he keeps fucking taking little digs at him. Your long-winded emails that I don't give a shit about. As far as quality of your content, as far as the quality and the content of your work is concerned, if they're if they are typical, then your supervisor was right, and this should not lead to a PhD, not because it's unorthodox, but because it is wrong in not some parts and not new or physically interesting in others. His and the university's subsequent handling of the issue of it is as you reports sounds unprofessional, just like avoiding confrontation. We would record the evaluation, and there would be an assessment by two other staff members, which if negative would be followed by a formal process of deregistration with an appeal mechanism and so on, but the conclusion might be the same. Well, that's nice that they have a quote unquote fair system to evaluate with, and that he acknowledged that the way that the university handled it was some bitch shit. So I respect that. Now let me revert to the start of your arguments. Your opening remark, A, about the regions. Jesus, this goes on forever. Your opening remark, A, about the regions R, or 2M being greater than R and R being greater than 2M, talks about validity, but you do not define valid. Your use of the word, your use of the word has the unfortunate consequence that to avoid confusion, I have to avoid use of valid at some points below. Until you do, I cannot argue with this or subsequent similar remarks very usefully. In the end, as I try to explain below, it seems to me that your arguments are either wrong or reduced to saying that the cursed cow and Zachary's form and interpretation are invalid because they are invalid, i.e., an opinion rather than a logical argument. Dang, your boy just called him circular AF. What I would treat as a valid is valid within GR is any manifold obeying Einstein's field equations, EFE, Einstein's field equations, that a matter that a matter content subject to reasonable restriction. Oh, that a matter content subject to reasonable restrictions, i.e., the speed of sound less than or equal to that of light, positive energy density. I would have to say that many of those are not appropriate to the actual universe, of course. An example I would say that about this general TWUB nut solution, Taub nut solution, as a global model, I need I need some better I need some better criterion than you have given me. Oh, I need some better criteria than what you have given me if I'm to be persuaded to change my view of what is valid. Your remark B, however, is wrong in its remark of measurability within general relativity. NGR one measures the invariant of the Riemann tensor and its derivatives, and in principle do so locally, not pointwise though. And this fixes R. Dude, like look at how convoluted this shit is. I in return I return to I return to this below. I seem to recall there was also a paper by Duff in the 70s which discussed the measurability of R, but I have not had time to track it down or check what it says. Well, guess who does have time? Look it up later. You repeat point B later in your email, but I will not repeat my you repeat your point B later in your email, but I will not repeat my reply each time. Dang. The comment that R is not a radius in the sense of a proper invariant defined space-time like distance from a central point is correct, of course. This has already been discussed at asterisk sign above R. Has already been discussed at asterisk sign above. R is invariantly defined and measured, but not as such, but not as, but not as such as space-like distance. Okay, well, I think that's in conflict with something somebody else said. In conflict. Yeah, if you asked most scientists to take a picture of their claims, they wouldn't be able to. Yeah, I mean, just take a picture of space time or whatever. you know, take a picture of that nothing expanding. You know, it's so weird because they'll describe um, space time and all that not as a physical object, right? Because we're always like, you know, what's bending and you know what's all that about. And people give their various answers about the so-called fabric, you know, but they say that it's a way to describe motion through three-dimensional space from a 4D perspective. So if you were on something that was so big and curved or whatever, you know, you would think from your perspective that you're going straight, but from a if you had another perspective from yours outside of what you're how you see it, you could see that you're traveling along a curve. Like that's what they say that quote unquote space time is. And then but then at the same time they say that's like they attribute no physicality to it in that sense, but at the same time they say that it's expanding um between objects and all these things, you know. And that actually this the expansion of space time is faster than the speed of light, you know. The nothing is faster. If you ask scientists to take a picture of their claims, they wouldn't be. Or wait, how did I not? Oh, if you asked a scientist to take a picture of their claims, they wouldn't be able to. It's like where's the proof my teacher talks to me like black holes are real? Yeah, even to this day, they misrepresent the quote unquote picture of a black hole in mainstream media so that they can convince people that they've taken a picture of a black hole. When at best case scenario, they've taken a picture of quote unquote space dust and gas rotating around the so-called event horizon before it gets sucked into oblivion, you know. Yeah, dude. And then you could say that the that the distance between the bend and the 7 is, infinitely expanding faster than the speed of light. And you can prove that because of math. So, let's see. If you develop an argument, I can't even remember where we were at. Measurable space-like distance. So next you develop an argument from a spherical polar form of flat space. You say that you place a mass at a point R and then write down the symmetric fuck spherically symmetric metric spherically symmetric metric, dude. She sells seashores by the seashells or whatever, man. Spherically symmetric metric. Your equation 5, based on the original theory, this cannot be correct. A point mass at R0 destroys the spherical symmetry about the original origin, the original. Um, though there will be, though there will still be symmetry about the new origin at R0, but this is not what you appear to be doing. If you were, the mass would be at R0. Yeah, man, I'm trying to get better at it. I can read like to myself, at a decent speed, but I want to get better at doing it live and stuff and all that. Let's see, where were we at here? So yeah, so you wouldn't be symmetrical unless you put R at 0, which we see them doing a whole bunch in their equations. We can go further if we instead take a spherical shell on the sphere R equals R sub O, and I shall assume that from now on, as otherwise everything that follows simply falls completely. Then you obtain the various forms of the Schwarzschild solution. What is then puzzling is talking about the correct form of C R. It is fundamental to differential geometry that there be no such thing. Any form is correct, providing it is suitably differentiable and 1 minus 1. I forget what this means. Does this have a. Yeah, of course. Yeah, dude. I meant Beyonce video. uh, Aspects of general in the one-to-one dimension. General relativity, the 1 plus. We're at a 1 minus 1. So I guess this is supposed to be describing some sort of dimension then. So a differential and some sort of dimension. All the different forms are just different coordinate systems on the same manifold or some extension or restriction of it. You then derive the radial distance from R sub O to R in equation 16. However, I cannot see why you have neglected the constant of the integration in 13, or equivalently failed to specify the lower limit of integration in 12. Dang, I like how this dude actually went through all that stuff I skipped over and analyzed it mathematically or whatever. Shout out to him, man. You may take it at R sub O. This adds terms to the right side of the second line in equation 13, which are the negatives of the ones given, but with R sub O substituted for R. Then your condition for R sub P and R arrow moving to R sub O is certainly true, but assuming that condition and that the terms involving the lower limit of integration vanish as you have gives a restriction which emerges at equation 15, i.e., R sub O is chosen to be at a point to be at a point to be at the point where that does that look confusing. R sub O is chosen to be at the point where that expression you took to be zero vanishes. The R sub O is no longer arbitrary. You have added a hidden assumption. There is no a priori reason why R sub O and the angular acceleration should be in any particular relation. So what was sub R again? It's R sub O. Note that I've tried to verify that it is a unique solution or that 15 is a unique solution to. Oh, I have not tried to verify. In fact, that R sub O is arbitrarily is what would one as what is what would one would expect. It is a basic result of Newtonian theory that the field interior to a spherically symmetrical object is exactly the same as the point mass at the center, regardless of how the actual distribution of mass with radius or the location of the outer boundary the matter field region. Hence, the exterior gravitational field of a spherical body cannot tell you the radius of the body. Hence, the exterior gravitation. So, what basic result would be the field exterior to a spherically symmetrical object is that of the same point of the center of grass, regardless of the actual distribution of mass with the radius or location, the outer boundary of the matter filled region. Hence, the exterior gravitational field of a spherical body cannot tell you what the radius or cannot tell you the radius of the body. The only things that Newtonian's field exterior to a spherically symmetric body fixes are the mass m and the location of r equals 0. In order for general relativity to give Newtonian theory as a limit, um, the same must be true in general relativity. The radius r equals 2m is of course fixed by m. Let's see. This is by m. If using general units rather than the geometrized units normally used in GR, one would have to add factors of the constant velocity of the speed of light c and Newtonian gravitational constant g, of course. Since the exterior field cannot possibly fix an arbitrarily chosen r sub o, a quantity and such a quantity need to be related to the mass. Therefore, I am not confident that 15 is wrong unless you have chosen a relation between r sub o and m a priori. So, effective. Next, you impose equation 17, then the preceding equation, from which my point of view, the coordinate conditions, or from my point of view, are coordinate conditions. However, you claim about the possible forms of C does not follow from them. There are an uncountable infinity of other choices, as it is inevitable when all that has been imposed as values at two boundaries and the monoticity um, and some appropriate differentiability in C5 uh, as a specific uncountable set. Consider the three parameter set of choice obtained by adding a small multiple. This is a of a bump function, and you don't know, and if you don't know what that is, you need to learn some basic differential geometry. Dang. Look in text for discussions of partitions of unity supported on the range of R sub 1 and R sub 2, where R sub O is greater than R sub 1, and R sub 1 is greater than R sub 2, and R sub 2 is greater than infinity. So, of course, the following discussion of possible forms of C and R is no more than consideration of special choices of coordinate, and by definition, GR is of no physical consequence. All the various form solutions, of course, they do give the differential equation sense different solutions to the Einstein equations, but in GR, we always consider only the equivalence class of each solution under the coordinate transformations, and that the call or at the call and the call and call the class, Jesus, and call the class all of whose members represent the same gravitational field, or for some region thereof, a solution of the Einstein field equations. Adopting a different convention of your own can be confusing. Your argument following it could, yeah, Jesus, this goes on for a hot minute. So basically, you're fucking wrong. None of what you're saying makes any sense. You that assumed the wrong R and all these things, right? Going on all the same. We'll just see what he summarizes at the end here. So I maintain that you have in no way reduced the force of the points that A, the KS solution is the solution for the Einstein field equations, including a region isomorphic to the original solution or Schwarzschild's original solution and its maximum analytic solution, and thereof provides the correct understanding of the global solution of which Schwarzschild is a part. B, it is wrong to treat R equals 2m as a point. To identify the points of the Kurzweil, Zerx, whatever thing, transformation form at which R equals 2m, and Schwarzschild's T takes any value. These form one sphere, not a one parameter family of spheres at different T. That's the origin of Hilbert's mistake. C, this is supported by the development of collapsing solutions, which leads to a black hole. Yeah, dude, these mathematical solutions collapse, and then in reality, a black hole collapses or whatever. Like this is people are crazy. So let's see what my boy Crackpot had to say. Crackpot Index, a simple method for rating potentially revolutionary contributions to physics. One, a 5 point star a negative 5 point starting credit. 1 point for every statement that is widely agreed on to be false. Who cares if other people agree it's false? This dude's a retard. About that. If your second rule is an appeal to authority, you're a retard. Nice fucking rules, guy. All right. Letter number 10. So we just read that dude's reply to his reply, and now we're going to read Crothers' reply to McCallan. And this time the gloves come off, dude. Hopefully it's not super long winded. Only a 5 pager, dude. Can we do it? Can we make it through? Oh. 19 June 2005. Sir, I have carefully read your reply. It is painfully clear to me that you have understood none of my arguments. I could address each of your arguments in turn and demonstrate why they are incorrect, but it seems to me that this would be a complete waste of time and energy. Well, these guys just say the same thing to each other a little bit, although Crothers did present a bunch of shit. Um, Therefore, I shall address only one of your arguments, as it is this one misconception that is central to all your quite fallacious arguments. Your interpretation your interpretation of your transformation of the standard metric for Minkowski space in terms of Schwarzschild's original form is wrong. Evidently, you think that because you call your new variable the pronumeral pronumeral, because you call your new variable by the pronumeral r, that it must be a radius. The pronumeral used is actually of no account whatsoever. Furthermore, you do not understand the basic geometrical relationship between the components of the metric tensor. Consider the standard Minkowski metric. And then he hits them with the old standard Minkowski metric, where 0 is greater than r and r is greater than infinity. So 0 is bigger than r is bigger than infinity. Does that even make sense? Or am I reading that backwards? R is greater than 0 and infinity is greater than r. I think I just read that backwards. Is this that? Yeah. Okay. Spatial component of 1 describes the sphere of the radius r centered at r equals 0 compared with the general relative or generalized metric. Then he hits them with the old standard generalized metric. And we got your ABC is less than whatever this is. Where R sub O is entirely arbitrary. Where R sub O is entirely arbitrary, lower bound on the real parameter R. I identify the radius of curvature R sub C, the proper radius R sub P, P for proper. I don't know if that's true, but the real valued R minus parameter, surface area A sub S, and the associated sphere, and the volume of said sphere is thus. And then he hits you with the equations for all that. That's equation number 3. The real valued R minus parameter is just the variable R, and he hits you with another equation to explain that. And you can tell by the squiggly lines and all the pi that he's definitely right. I remarked that I could already generalize equation number 2 further, so that R sub O, or that's R sub 0 can be approached from above and below, but will not include the complication but I will not include that in complication at this point. Now, I also remark that the geometrical relations between the components of the metric tensor 1 are precisely the same as those between the components of the metric tensor 2, in equation 2. This is a matter of geometry and not opinion. Excuse me. I don't know if my mic picked that up or not, but I burped. And then he's got your standard R equations here and all these things. So R owing to the pseudo-Euclidean nature of equation 1 and the lower bound of R at R is 0 or R sub 0 equals 0. Next, consider your transformation of equation 1, which I write as R equals Z cubed plus what is that? That was angular acceleration cubed by over 1/3. And he what is that called when they linearize it? Or yeah, so he linearizes this. We're owing to equation 4, and yeah, you can denote Z by R and think that it is still a radius as you can denote Z by R and think that it is still a radius as in equation 1 and that Z equals 0 is the origin. This is not correct. Your R for my Z in equation 5 is no longer a radius as I see your radius and raise you you know, another thing that's not a radius. Jesus. It's for the plane equation 4, 5, and 6, but instead the real valued parameter of the radius. Yeah. What is he? Lots of R's. All right. Once again, all these R's owing to the pseudo-Euclidean nature of equation 5. Note how that all these R's do not equal Z. The variable Z in equation 5 is not a radial coordinate on equation 5, contrary to your claims. There is nothing more. It is nothing more than a parameter for the determination of the radial quantities R sub R and R sub P according to the geometric relations between the components of the metric tensor. Given in equation 3, your comparison of equation 5 with Schwarzschild's real solution is flawed because Schwarzschild's original solution relates to the pseudo-Riemann geometry of the gravitational field, whereas equation 5 describes Minkowski space. Over and over, your incorrect interpretations of the significance of the Z parameter, or of parameter Z. Thus, your arguments are errors and compounded with errors. Your arguments are errors compounded with errors. Dang. Dude's hitting them with that. One sec. All right. Now that the gravitational field R sub P is not equal to R sub C, R is merely a real value parameter of the determination of R sub P and R sub Z. Thus, and then he hits you with the longest equation I've seen in a couple of papers. And we'll just check the math real quick. Looks good to me. Where I've shown elsewhere that this math equation here is not RP, or means that R sub P is not equal to R sub C, owing to the non-Euclidean nature of the equations in number 7. I will now generalize equation 1 so that the origin is located at any arbitrary r sub 0, in which case the radius no longer takes the same value as the coordinate r, thus, and then the linearized version of what he wrote or whatever, or generalized version, I mean. Uh, A, B, C, yep, and then all that equals 4 over 3 by times pi. Yeah, seems about right. Oh yeah, on UATV. Yeah, he had to make his own platform. That the whole thing is completely funded by the people that watch the different creators that are on there because he kept getting censored off of everything. So yeah, sure want to. Or did I read that wrong? Subscribe to Ellen Benjamin thing. They want a monthly. Oh, you can cancel it though if you just want to do like 1 month or whatever. It just signs up as recurring when you by default or whatever. Origin. Oh yeah, yeah. These okay, yeah, these equations. These equations clearly render Euclidean forms owing to the pseudo-Euclidean nature of the equations 8. Note that RP blah blah blah, all these R's do not equal the lowercase r. The origin of the equation 8 is that the arbitrary sub r and or r sub 0 and r sub 0 can be approached from above and below. R equals 0 is not an origin unless r sub 0 equals 0, in which case equation 8 reduces to equation 1. There is nothing special about r equals 0 that makes it always the same origin. Equation 1 is merely a special case of equation 8. The radius of a sphere associated with the with equation 8 must be determined by the geometrical relationship of equation 3, which are common forms of equation 2. Yeah, that makes sense. In the case of the metric for the gravitational field for a simple point mass equation, um, fact that r, yeah, more equations and then they equal 0, i.e. r sub p times r sub 0 equals 0 is an inescapable consequence of Einstein's geometry. There is nothing more there is nothing more point like in the gravitational field. The unusual concept of a point in Minkowski space does not exist in Einstein's gravitational field. The usual conception of a point does not exist within. Notwithstanding, the point mass and point charges are fictitious, and so point mass and point charge solutions are all nonsense. I've also dealt with this issue in my published papers. The correction of the geometrical error of the relativist leads directly to the results that I have published in my paper. Black holes have no theoretical basis whatsoever. All of Einstein's all of Einstein's field equations purporting an expanding universe are incorrect. The Friedman solutions, the Lemaitre, I can't remember what that guy's name is, Robertson solutions, the Robertson-Walker solutions, the Einstein de Sitter solutions, etc., are nothing more than mathematical gibberish, meaningless concoctions of mathematical symbols, dude. Oh, he goes on further. Well, hold on. I wanted to copy this part real quick. Just really needed this part. Oh, this one. Need the whole thing. All right, C. The conventional interpretation of the Hubble relation and the CMB are not consistent with general relativity. The Big Bang hypothesis has no basis in theory whatsoever. Cosmologically, Einstein's theory of gravitation admits only of a flat, infinite, static, empty spacetime. Special relativity, which being devoid of matter cannot describe the universe other than locally. That concludes my address of the technical matters. I will now address you on a personal levels. I must first apologize to you as I must first apologize as for as for first I must first apologize as for you a gentleman I mistook. In all the emails you sent me, you included rude, arrogant, condescending, stupid, and insulting remarks. You have rightly earned yourself you have rightly earned yourself a bloody nose, if not for the distance between us, that I might have visited you to deliver. Oh man, to deliver the uh, causative blow. Oh, to deliver the causative blow, not because not because of your incompetent and technical argument, but because of your behavior. Because your behavior has been that of an arsehole, dude. It seems that you are doomed to live and die a conceited shithead. Moreover, a conceited shithead who cannot even do elementary geometry. Well, hey, man. Oh, shit. That's the most elegant way to bang somebody out, I guess. Yeah. Yeah. Very elegant, man. Yeah. So that's where the gloves came off. Let me make sure I downloaded that. And yep, I got it. All right. So where are we at now? Jay Bergstein, member of the International Committee for General Relativity and Gravitation, wrote me but offered no science and simply called me an antiquarian and generally insulted me. He then disappeared. I had some brief correspondence with Jay Pullen, member of the General Gravity place, and the this other guy in Spain. Neither provided any scientific discourse. He also wrote the famous Roy Kerr of the Kerr solution and pointed out the errors. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's read. Or let's look up what this word means real quick. Relating to or dealing with an antiquarian, dealing with a person who studies and collects antiques. What? Dude, call him an antiquarian, bro. Person who studies and collects. Interesting. You can read about that here, and we're not, well, International Center for Theoretical and its okay, well, I guess we will read that. My papers are cited on the American Mathematical Society. Yeah, I tried to look them up, but I couldn't find them. Give it another shot. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, when was this? This was a black hole and Big Bang, a simplified refutation. Yeah, we'll be reading that. Most of my papers are here. Oh yeah, cool. Bookmark that. Yeah, I did. Yeah, dude's been killing it on uh refuting all this stuff. LIGO, Lisa. Heck, nothing. We'll have to read that later. Have and have not, the paradox of black holes. Damn, dude. Well, we'll keep, let's see. Read about, book, the International Center for Theoretical Physics and its involvement in scientific fraud by Stephen J Crothers. 2005, the ICTP in Tristal, Italy, establishes its Abdus Salam electronic, or its Abdus Salam electronic open archive, ostensibly for free dis free dissemination of scientific papers. The URL of which was this right here, and it looks like it's gone now. I guess. Turns out that this is a lie. The ICTP, actually censors papers submitted to its. Why can't I read this? It looks. Turns out that this is a lie. The ICTP actually censors papers submitted to it for posting on its archives. It does not matter if the paper has been published in peer-reviewed international scientific journals or not. Any paper which questions the orthodox views or provides sound theoretical arguments or adduces, uh, adduces observational evidence which in some way undermines the generally accepted theory or interpretations of data is either rejected at the oust or removed from the archive sometime later. No notification or explanation is sent to the author of the paper. The ICTP electronic archive seems to now have been shut down. In my own case, I had 11 papers posted to the Abdus Salam's archive with the 12th paper pending. My papers have been on the archive for a period of several weeks to several months. These several papers have all been published in peer reviewed international scientific journals in 2005 and 6, namely Progression in Physics, Bulletin of Pure and Applied Science, Sciences, D. Physics, Bulletin for Pure and Applied Physics and Mathematics. My work adduces cogent. My work adduces cogent theoretical analysis within the framework of general relativity itself, proving that neither black holes nor the Big Bang are consistent with GR, and the documented proof of the scientific and historical record of the black hole has been deliberately suppressed, distorted, manipulated, and falsified by other orthodox relativists. Evidently, my work has now come to the attention of the International Committee of General Relativity and Gravitation and its associates. For want of given explanation, it seems that the members of the committee and its associates have brought pressure to bear to the administration on the ICTP, causing them to erase my papers. The ICTP is guilty of being complicit in scientific fraud and is clearly engaged in a deliberate suppression of the science pecuniary for the pecuniary benefit and the reputation of its committee and the reputation of its committee members and their associates in my particular case. My review of the books on general relativity at Amazon.com was also removed without any notice or explanation from Amazon, presumably at the behest of the relativist. It also seems that Amazon too is engaged in the suppression of falsification of science in the pursuit of monetary profit. It would therefore appear that my work has not been recognized as sound throughout and thorough. Has not been. It would therefore appear that my work has not been recognized as a sound and thorough discredit of black hole and Big Bang, of the black hole in Big Bang and the Big Bang. For otherwise, why would they bother to remove my papers if my work was truly rubbish to simply be ignored? No, in fact, no. The fact that I have been marked as a dangerous adversary to be silenced at all costs is to the greatest fraud, so that the greatest fraud in the history of science is not exposed. My own papers can be freely obtained here, along with the historical papers of famous scientists, which clearly prove the falsification of the scientific record. That is website here. And I urge the person who wishes to have their scientific papers deposited in a freely accessible electronic archive avoid ICTP Abdus Salam archive and the Cornell AR Ziv archive, which is also routinely censors papers, and instead deposit their papers on the electronic archive ZI Zoo. This one looks like the same one, but it's slightly different. It is. They just inverted the last part. Ziv has been established by scientists who are concerned about the current decline. Scientists who are concerned about the current decline of science into mysticism and the contaminant organized crime and the concomitant organized crime. Papers deposited on the site are not censored on the account of scientific content. I also urge a person seeking to publish a paper. I also urge any person seeking to publish a paper in an international peer-reviewed journal to submit their papers to Progress in Physics and the Bulletin of Applied Science. The latter covers a whole ambit of scientific investigation for consideration. We'll have to check these dudes out. Well, I guess we won't. Well, not this website anyway. Oh, I have it bookmarked. Interesting. All right, cool. So that's the story of Stephen J. Crothers. Aspects of Black hole, Big Bang, modern physics. Here are the important original papers that prove these theories invalid. Oh, cool. He has them all. Here are some important papers that deal with black hole and Big Bang. Oh, is it? My first name's Alan. My channel used to be called Space Audits with Alan, but it was such a long name. Field. Look at these real quick. All right. All right, cool, man. So that was that. Oh, how to couple space time with that. Physics of irrational numbers. All right, we'll come back to that some other time. All right, I think we're good on these for now. I can't read another one. All right, what was that thing I was going to look up? Oh, yeah, what was, Eddington. 1919. Okay, yeah, so that was 1919, right? Eddington eclipse data. Did researchers cook the data for the first test of general relativity? Oh, yeah. All right. All right. So one of the first things that really propelled general relativity as a viable um, theory was this observation allegedly made by this Arthur Eddington guy who works as he was like a military he was in military intelligence or something like that. He was like one of the first people to adopt Einstein's general theories and stuff. And he published a book on it called, I think it was The Mathematics of General Relativity or something like that. He was super into it, like way when everyone else was saying that it was retarded and was bullshit. This dude was like, "Nah, man, this is that real shit." So anyway, he came up with this observation to see if starlight would bend around the sun during an eclipse, and apparently his observation was true and all that, and it's one of the things that people defer to confirm general relativity. and we're gonna see. I've heard that he omitted a bunch of data from it, like 60% of it, or something like that. So we'll see if even the foundations of this are what's up with that. Not only because of not only because of theory, Dyson, Eddington, and competing myths of the 1919 eclipse expedition. Introduction. Let me zoom this in that white background. All right. Introduction. One of the most celebrated physics experiments in the 20th century. A century of isn't it relativity to where someone is standing and there's motion and the motion appears to be faster or something? That sounds like time dilation, I think, where someone is standing. Yeah, it's relativity where the someone is standing still and someone's in motion. They're moving faster through time or something. Well, let's look it up and get an exact is relativity. The state the state or fact of being relative. Physics, a theory formulated essentially by Albert Einstein that all motion must be defined as a relative frame of reference and that space and time are relative rather than absolute concepts. Well, that didn't help. um, but yeah, it's something like that, like what you were saying. All right. Okay. One of the most celebrated physics experiments in the 20th century, a century of many breakthroughs in physics, took place on May 29th, 1919. Two remote equatorial locations. One was the town of Sobral in northern Brazil. The other was the island of Principe. Like if I stand still and you get on a bike and start going somewhere forward, forward. Yeah, I think that's the time dilation description of like how the time, like how if you're if your frame of reference is still or whatever, and I'm like moving fast around you, because that's what they say, like that's the twin paradox, right? When they say like if there's two twins, right, one twin stays on Earth and the other twin goes into orbit, because of the distance between him and the other twin and the speed or whatever, that the one twin that's in space will be slightly older than the one that stays on ground by like a few, milliseconds or some bullshit. Well, the twin paradox. That's basically what you're describing, I think. The twin paradox is a thought experiment in relativity and who make the journey through space at a high speed. Yeah. The experiment of the island of Principe off the coast of West Africa. The experiment in question concerned the problem of whether light rays are deflected by gravitational forces and took them from an ice. Yes, fuck, 30 pages. I should read this shit tomorrow. Yeah, it's retarded, dude. Their proof of time dilation was I don't know if we talked about this, but they took that Ives Stillwell experiment and they found that the what was it, the absorption pattern and the light spectra that they were examining matched that which was predicted by special relativity. And they used that as their proof. But the way that Ives produced produced the redshift effect is outside of the confines of what special relativity predicts, but they just claim the result for their own because special relativity apparently predicted that the formation it would make, but also the Ives guy, he also came up with a prediction and it matched his prediction and stuff, but they say that his measurement was too small to uh to be verified for his theory, but it's big enough to be verified for special relativity. Like it's so ass backwards and retarded. Um, you know, the experiment in question concerned of the problem. Fuck. Oh yeah, so I should read this tomorrow because it's already 3:30, and I got some stuff to do tomorrow or today actually, a couple hours. So I'm gonna make some notes of where we're leaving off at. And are you around during the day? So I'll probably stream during the day tomorrow. I probably won't be on as late tomorrow night. But if you're on during like I don't know, probably around 2 p.m. EST. What time zone do you live in? Live stream notes. Continue with all right. Oh word. Oh yeah. All right, man. Well, I'll hit you up to hit me up tomorrow, and I'll be back then. See you, dude. Have a good night.